Hello, welcome to my channel. My name's Gemma and this is my first booktube video. I am going to attempt to not make it too cringy. I apologise in advance if I fidget, if I look out the window, if my dog jumps up, who's just down there. But I will try my best to make it not too bad. So I'm going to start with a tag video. Thought that would be the easiest way to start. It's relatively simple. Hopefully the editing won't be too strenuous as I am technologically challenged. Why start a booktube video then, you say, but you know. So the first question for, have I even told you which tag I'm doing? The mid-year book Freakout tag is what we're going to have a go at. Apologies if I have already said that. So question number one is the best book you've read this year. For that, I am going to say All the Ugly and Wonderful Things by Bryn Greenwood. Honestly, I'm still a little bit uncomfortable when I think back to that book. For any that have read it, you'll probably understand it was very challenging in its content. Lots and lots of trigger warnings for drug abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse. It is a difficult read. But I am still thinking about it nearly 6 months after I read it. I think I read it in February. And that is why it is my number one book of the year. It challenged a lot of my conceptions. It made me feel physically sick in places. Not for everybody, I know. But a book that can make me feel the sheer volume of emotions that I felt reading that book is impressive in my mind. So for those that don't know, All the Ugly and Wonderful Things follows a young girl called Wavy. I suppose it's a coming of age story. It starts when she is very young, and we look at all the challenges that she faces through growing up with her parents, and how she sort of copes with that and the coping mechanisms that she puts in place. It's based in sort of Midwestern America, and the story really kicks off when she meets someone who's effectively a hired thug of her dad, a man named Kellen, and how their relationship grows and changes throughout the story. Highly recommend it. Obviously, trigger warnings. If you're triggered by any of those things, then obviously possibly not. Question number two, the best sequel you've read this year. So I'm going to say I haven't actually read that many sequels this year. I have been pretty bad at starting new series and not continuing them. So the only one really eligible for this is The Fiery Cross by Diana Gabaldon, which is the 5th in the Outlander series. I think most people are quite familiar with this series of books, if not from actually reading the books, from watching the TV show. Love them. I absolutely love them. I've listened to all of them on audio. They are long audiobooks, so if that's not your jam, then obviously physically read them, or if you don't want to read them, watch the show. I would highly recommend. They're very, very good. But the audiobooks for me are narrated. They're narrated by Davina Porter, and she could literally read me the dictionary, and I would listen to it. It's that good. So yeah, the 5th book in the series. I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. I do feel like it needs to pick up the pace a bit now, the series. I mean, that book was 1,500 pages, and the best part of 50 hours of audiobook. And I didn't feel like the story really progressed from where it had left off in the 4th book. Saying that, I will absolutely be reading the 6th one, or listening to the 6th one, possibly later this year. We'll see how we go. And I know the newest one is due to be released towards the end of the year. Is it the 8th one or the 9th one? lost track. But yeah, so that is my answer for that. Quite long-winded, but hopefully you got that. Apologies that I keep looking down. I've written the questions down on a piece of paper that are on the floor because my setup is amateur at best. So the next one, new release that you haven't read yet but want to. Okay, so this is quite an easy one for me. I've left it on my shelf just because I know I'm going to love it so much. And I haven't picked it up, but I really should. And that is The Four Winds by Kristin Hannah. So I have read The Nightingale and The Great Alone and Winter Garden by Kristin Hannah. The Nightingale is probably my favourite book of all time. The Winter Garden I read last year and it emotionally destroyed me. The Great Alone was very good, in my opinion, the weaker of the three that I've read, but I've heard very good things about this. I do think it's going to be a bit of a tearjerker. So I don't really know that much about it. All I know is that it's sort of set in the Depression era in America. I think it's about a mother and her children or her child basically moving to California, something like that. I don't need to know a lot because it's written by Kristin Hannah, so I'll read it. But I will definitely be listening to that by the end of the year. So the next question, sorry, got my head in the camera there. So the next question is my biggest disappointment for the year. Okay, so this is a one that I've read quite recently, and that is Lullaby by Leila Slimani. I don't know whether I just hadn't understood what this book was about, or it just wasn't for me, but I thought it was going to be a thriller, and it wasn't really. It was a character study. It follows a nanny named Louise. You start the book with the two children that she looks after have been killed, and we're led to believe that they have been killed by Louise, the nanny. I believe the book is actually called The Nanny in the States. And then you sort of go back in time to when she's first hired by this family and how events lead up to the children being dead. Sounds riveting, sounds really interesting, but honestly, I was bored. I really thought I was going to love it. I've seen rave reviews about it. It's a very short book. It's only about 200 pages, and I struggled to get through it. So it clearly just wasn't for me. Yeah, I don't really have a lot else to say about it, really. It just missed the mark. It wasn't what I was expecting. And perhaps if I'd gone into it knowing it was more of a character study, I would have had a slightly different opinion. But even then, no, it just wasn't for me. Next, biggest surprise of 2021. So for this, I am going to say Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. Everybody's talking about this book. I've seen it everywhere, on BookTube, on Facebook, on Instagram. I don't read romance. It just isn't for me. It's too fluffy, and yeah, it's just, I've read a few obviously in the past, but yeah, it's not really for me. But I thought everyone's talking about it. I felt like I needed something light and easy. I listened to it on audio. It was so funny. I was literally in hysterics laughing in the car in the middle of the Norfolk countryside. I didn't expect it to be that funny. It was quite dry, sarcastic, what I would call British humour. And yeah, I was very pleasantly surprised, gave it 5 stars, would highly recommend. So the next question is favourite new author. Another quite easy one, Natalie Haynes is winning this trophy. I have read 2 of her books in the first 6 months of 2021. I've read 1,000 Ships and Pandora's Jar. So 1,000 Ships follows the women's perspective of the Battle of Troy, and you follow lots of different women throughout that. You don't have one central character, so you have perspectives from Helen, from the gods, from just normal people that live in the city when it's sacked. Fantastic, loved it. It was so well done, so well executed. Really, really enjoyed it. Pandora's Jar is quite different in a way because it's non-fiction, but it is the non-fiction of women in mythology. So you get to hear the stories of Medusa, for example, and how they have changed from sort of the original ancient Greek versions and how they've been changed and tweaked and adjusted over the years. And how actually was that story fair in the first place when it was written in Greek? You know, the reality of Medusa is that it's about a woman who was raped by a god in a temple and then punished for it. So it just open your eyes, and it brings in a lot of more modern cultural references into things. The Clash of the Titans is a film that I grew up with, and it brings that into it, and how that depicts different women in Greek mythology. And it was really, really interesting. Definitely worth a read if you're interested in Greek mythology. And yeah, so 2 books by her. She does have another fiction book, The Children of Jocasta, which I'm hoping to get to later this year. But based on the 2 that I've read, she is an auto-buy author for me going forwards. Newest fictional crush. Okay, I don't really do fictional crushes. So if I really had to pick someone, then it's going to be Jamie Fraser from the Outlander books. That's not really a new crush because I'm on the 5th book in the series. And also, I'm not sure if it's actually based on the character in the book or the actor that plays Jamie Fraser in the show. Sam Heughan? I'll put a picture of him somewhere up here so that you can see what I mean, because why would you not crush on that situation? Okay, question number 9, newest favourite character. So for this, it's got to be Linus Baker from The House in the Cerulean Sea. That book, it was delicious. Honestly, it was so nice to read. It just gave you it was a warm hug of a book. I highly recommend it. And Linus, so for those that don't know, The House in the Cerulean Sea follows a man who's effectively a social worker for magical children, and he gets sent on this special assignment to where there's some really difficult children, and he's got to observe what's going on in that, effectively that orphanage. And he starts out and he's so straight-laced, and he doesn't really have a life outside of his cats and his sunflowers. And he goes to this school for magical children, this home for magical children, and his character changes and he grows braver and stronger, and he starts to believe in himself, and there is other stuff that goes on around it, and just everything, his relationship with the kids and his relationship with the like the head of the home, and how he interacts with the people that are discriminating against those children. Honestly, you just want to cuddle that man. He's lovely. Question 10, a book that made you cry. So this is an easy one. The Woman in the White Kimono by Anna Johns. Yeah, I ugly cried reading this book. You know when you cry so much you can't actually read the words on the page? That's where we got to with that one. So The Woman in the White Kimono follows, it's a split timeline, and you follow a young woman called Tori in the present timeline. Her father dies. She finds out that potentially something happened with him when he was in the war in Japan. So she travels to Japan to find out the backstory to what happened when he was a young man before she was born. And then you flick back to World War II Japan, and a young woman called Naoko, and she is part of quite a prominent Japanese family. She falls in love with an American soldier, and it's about her journey through that with the disapproval from her family, and how she tries to have a relationship with a man that she loves but who she shouldn't love, and what happens through. I'm not going to say any more because it's a spoiler. But yeah, needless to say, it ripped my heart out and stomped on it a lot. So, number 11, a book that made you happy. For this, I'm going to choose a book that I read really recently, The Secret Life of Bees by Sue Monk Kidd. So I read another book by Sue Monk Kidd last year. I read The Book of Longings, which I thought was very good, 4 stars. The Secret Life of Bees, it was just so lovely. You know those books that you pick up and you think, the writing in here just is so lovely. The descriptions are lovely, the characters are realistic, and you're rooting for them. And it follows a young girl called Lily as she tries to escape her abusive father and find out more information about her mother, who died when she was very little. And she comes to be living with 3 black women, sisters, in I think it's in North Carolina, and how her relationship with them grows and how she grows as a person. And these women have beehives, and that's where The Secret Life of Bees comes from. And they produce honey, and that's their source of income. But everything down to the detail of like how the hives are maintained and how they treat the bees and how that then weaves into the story. It was expertly done. And yeah, it made me happy. It made me happy. Question number 12, the most beautiful book you've bought or received this year. So for that, I am going to go for How We Disappeared by Jing-Jing Lee. I mean, look at that. How beautiful is that cover? I don't think I really need to say anymore because it's, beautiful. If I'm honest, I don't know that much about it. I believe it's a dual timeline, and it follows a young girl who's sent to a Japanese brothel during the war. That's all I really know. I don't like to know too much before I go into my books. So, yes, hoping to pick this one up soon. But, yeah, very pretty. Okay, and then we are on to the last question. Books you need to read before the end of the year. So, I have 5 books here. At the beginning of this year, I sent myself 5 physical books and 5 Kindle books that I wanted to try and finish by the end of the year, because I have some that sit around and I just never quite get to them, or ones that I really want to prioritise this year. So if I start with the Kindle books, the first one I really want to get to is A Gentleman in Moscow by Amor Towles. I heard lots of good things about it, saw it everywhere last year. All I know about it is about a Russian man who is basically imprisoned in a hotel during the war. I don't even know which war, World War II, I am assuming. So yeah, want to get to that one. Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. I think everyone's read it. I've watched the movie, but I've had it on my Kindle for literally years, maybe like verging on a decade. So I really want to get to that one. Psychological thriller. I enjoyed the film. I haven't watched it in a while, so I'm hoping I won't remember everything. But yeah, want to get to that one. And then the last one on my Kindle is Leviathan Wakes by S.A. Corey. So Leviathan Wakes is a sci-fi opera. There are several books in the series. I don't know, 8, 10 books in the series. The Expanse series, I believe it's called. And I bought my dad a copy of it, not this Christmas, but the Christmas before. So I really want to read it this year so that I can discuss it with him. He wasn't a massive fan, so then I kind of bump it down my list. But I really do want to read it this year to see if our opinions are the same. Physical book-wise, there are 2 that I haven't got to yet. The first one is Incendiary by Cleaves. I bought this on a whim in Waterstones when I was a teenager. I had no idea what it was about then. I still don't really know what it's about now from reading the back. I believe it's the story of a mother and her child. Given that it's written by a man, not entirely convinced, but I have had it on my shelf for ages. It's not very long. It's like 330 pages. I really just need to get to it and either get rid of it or pass it on or do something with it. So there's that one. And the other one I really want to read this year is Girl, Woman, Other by Bernadine Evaristo. I think a lot of people have read this. I am way behind on this one. Need to catch up. So multi-perspective, lots of different women, lots of representation. So that's all I really know. And that's all I really need to know. Oh, and it's based in Britain, which is always nice. I like a story based where I live. So that, my friends, I believe is that. So this could be the worst YouTube video in the history of YouTube, but we gave it a go, and that is the main thing, right? Okay, well, thanks very much for listening, and I will see you again soon.